Welcome to Bookish Mind, Season 05, Episode 12, where we delve deep into Daniel Goleman's insightful book, Focus. Today we explore Chapter 12, revealing how the intricate dance of ancient trade routes, the spread of disease, and the challenges of our modern world are all governed by invisible yet powerful systems.
I'm truly fascinated by this idea, that there's these unseen forces constantly shaping our reality, and our deep dive today begins in a completely unexpected place, the ancient world.
And that's precisely the profound insight we want to share with you. This deep dive, it's really all about moving beyond just surface-level observations of daily life. It's about beginning to recognize the intricate, often hidden systems that underpin pretty much everything, from like the flow of goods across continents millennia ago to the rapid spread of a virus or, the complex dynamics of global conflict. Once you start to see the world through a systems lens, your ability to understand and navigate its complexities, well, it really changes dramatically. Okay, so let's unpack this. You mentioned a remarkable story, something that illustrates how these invisible systems can reveal themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Our journey starts with Dr. Larry Brilliant. He's an MD, renowned for his monumental work with the World Health Organization on smallpox eradication. A huge achievement.
Right, I've heard of that. Amazing work.
But his unique path to understanding global systems didn't start in a sterile lab or some policy meeting. It actually began, believe it or not, with a back injury in the remote Himalayas.
A back injury. How does that lead to systems thinking? That sounds unexpected.
It really is. Picture this. He's confined to a bed in this isolated Indian hamlet after a fall. Dr. Larry, he's a man of action, right? So he needed a distraction. He asked his wife to find him books on Indian coins. It was a childhood hobby. What started as just, a way to pass the time quickly turned into this unexpected, powerful revelation about how interconnected ancient civilizations actually were.
Wow. So just from looking at old coins, what did he find?
Well, he really immersed himself in them, not just as collectibles, but as historical artifacts. He started to grasp the intricate history of trading networks in that part of the world. He'd even visit local goldsmiths, who apparently often sold ancient gold and silver coins just by weight. This gave him access to this treasure trove of historical data, really.
Okay.
And he found coins from the Kushan Empire, a really powerful entity that back in the 2nd century CE stretched all the way from the Aral Sea in Central Asia down to Benares in India. Huge area.
Kushan Empire. Okay. And the coins themselves, what was special about them?
Well, this is where it gets really fascinating. On one side, they featured their king, pretty standard. But the flip side wasn't just like art or a simple local deity. It portrayed this dizzying array of gods and goddesses, Shiva, Buddha, deities from Persian, Egyptian, Greek, Hindu, even Roman pantheons.
Wait, all on the same coins from an empire based in Central Asia?
Exactly. It wasn't just a sign of religious tolerance, though maybe that was part of it. It was a profound historical clue.
How so? I mean, how back in the 2nd century could an empire sitting in what's now Afghanistan know so much about religions thousands of miles away, let alone put their gods on official money? It sounds almost impossible for that time.
Well, the answer, it turns out, lay in the economic and social systems of the day. The Kushan Empire created for the very first time this unique, protected link between the Indian Ocean trade routes, which were already buzzing, and the legendary Silk Road.
Ah, okay, so they were like a hub.
Precisely, a critical hub. Their strategic position meant they enabled regular contact with merchants, scholars, holy men, people whose roots stretched from the Mediterranean across Europe and Asia down to the Ganges in India, and from the Arabian Peninsula all the way to northwestern China. It was vast.
Right.
The coins were basically a physical manifestation of this huge cultural exchange. And it wasn't just the Kushans. Dr. Leary also found tons of Roman coins way down in South India.
Oh, Roman coins in India.
Yeah. Turns out the Romans, whose empire touched the Red Sea, they regularly sailed around Arabia by boat to places like Goa for trade. It just shows the reach of these ancient sea-based systems, too.
So Dr. Larry Brilliant, the MD laid up with a bad back, could literally sort of reverse engineer these ancient trade routes just by tracking where the coins popped up.
Pretty much. It's an incredible testament to how observing these seemingly isolated data points, just coins appearing here and there, can reveal a much larger invisible system at play.
That's our first real glimpse into what Goleman calls systems thinking, then. Seeing connections that aren't immediately obvious, understanding how all the parts fit into the whole thing.
Exactly. And the resonance, it didn't stop with ancient history. After his work with the WHO, Dr. Laurie went to the University of Michigan to get a master's in public health. And he quickly realized something striking. Tracking the spread of an epidemic was remarkably similar to tracking the spread of an ancient civilization like the Kushans or, the flow of Roman trade.
Huh. How so?
Both involved following clues, archaeological, linguistic, cultural clues, just on different timelines and scales.
Yeah.
Epidemiology uses similar pattern-finding skills.
It's like his accidental history lesson was kind of preparing him for his future mission in public health without him even realizing it.
It really seems that way.
Can you give us some historical examples of how these system dynamics played out with epidemics? Show how that past really does inform the present.
Absolutely. Let's take the devastating 1918 flu pandemic. It's thought to have started in Kansas, of all places.
Kansas, really?
Yep. But it spread globally at this unprecedented speed, largely propelled by American troops moving around during World War I. Yeah. This wasn't just a local outbreak. It moved at the speed of steamships and the newly expanding rail networks, like the famous Orient Express. The transportation system enabled its spread.
Right, the system itself accelerated it.
Exactly. And it tragically killed an estimated 50 million people worldwide. Now, contrast that with today. A pathogen can hop on a 747 and be on a different continent in a totally new population in just hours.
Wow.
Yeah, the entire system of global travel has dramatically amplified the speed and scale of potential outbreaks, which makes systems thinking even more critical now.
You mentioned polio, too.
Right. Polio is actually an ancient disease known sporadically for centuries, but it only became a full-blown epidemic in the 20th century. Why? Urbanization.
Urbanization. How did that change things?
Well, in cities, people stopped relying on individual wells, cleaner water sources usually. Instead, they started sharing single, often polluted, water systems. The system of water distribution changed.
Ah, I see. More people connected to the same potentially contaminated source.
Precisely. And with that change in the system, the disease's trajectory changed. It turned a relatively rare occurrence into a widespread, terrifying threat.
This ability, then, to detect those subtle underlying patterns, to see the whole ecosystem, not just the isolated events, that's the mark of what Goleman calls a systems mind.
That's right.
It's like being able to spot, I don't know, the Where's Waldo in a really complex picture,
Right.
or see the faint signal in a lot of noise.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And studies actually show that people who are better at things like estimating the number of dots flashed quickly on a screen, or designing complex software, or even figuring out how to save failing ecosystems, they tend to be better systems thinkers. It's a really powerful cognitive advantage.
So what exactly is a system in this context?
Well, at its core, a system is simply a cohesive set of lawful, regular patterns. Think of the water cycle or a financial market, or even, the human body. They all operate with predictable interconnections and rules.
Okay. And our brains. Do we have a special part for this?
Interestingly, no. While our brains do have circuitry for general pattern recognition that's in the parietal cortex, there isn't a single dedicated systems brain network that we know of. Instead, we learn how to read and navigate systems using the general learning talents of our neocortex, the same part that handles complex math or engineering.
So it's different from things like self-awareness or empathy, which seem more hardwired.
Exactly. Systems understanding is learned. It takes conscious effort, practice, to develop this skill, but it's absolutely crucial for navigating life successfully, especially as our world gets more and more complex and interconnected.
Which brings us back to Dr. Larry Brilliant's current work. This systems perspective, it carried over into his role as head of the Skoll Global Threats Fund.
Yes, very much so. Their mission is huge.
Yeah.
Safeguarding humanity against massive dangers like conflict in the Middle East, nuclear proliferation, pandemics, climate change, battles over water scarcity, huge, complex issues.
So how does this ability to see the hidden architecture, the systems perspective, how does it even begin to apply to these truly colossal global challenges? They seem almost overwhelming.
That's the crucial question, isn't it? How do you tackle problems that are so immense and deeply interconnected? Dr. Larry talks about identifying hot spots where trouble might bubble up, but maybe even more importantly, understanding the underlying systemic vulnerabilities that allow those problems to fester or spread. These kinds of challenges are often referred to by experts as wicked problems, sometimes even super wicked problems.
Wicked problems. Okay, that sounds ominous. Are we talking about, problems that are inherently evil, or is it more about their structure?
It's definitely the latter. Wicked problems aren't about moral evil. They're called wicked because they're fundamentally resistant to simple solutions. They're often ill-defined, constantly changing, deeply tangled up with other problems, and often the very act of trying to solve them reveals new, unexpected challenges. There's just no single clear answer.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about future global flu pandemics. Goleman points out they are wicked, because each one will likely be unique in some way. You can't perfectly pretest your response, and the stakes are incredibly high. There's basically no room for error. The system is just too dynamic and complex to predict perfectly.
Okay, that makes sense. And super wicked, what makes a problem super wicked?
So global warming is often cited as the classic super wicked problem. It takes all the complexity of a wicked problem and adds even more layers. For instance, there's no single global authority in charge of fixing it. Time is rapidly running out. The very people and systems trying to solve the problem are also the ones contributing to it.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. And perhaps most frustratingly, official policies in some places might dismiss its importance or even actively hinder solutions. All these factors create this kind of systemic gridlock that makes it incredibly difficult to address effectively.
And these problems, they don't exist in isolation, right? Goleman mentions messes. Sounds like they all feed into each other.
Precisely. Messes is the technical term, believe it or not. There are these troubling predicaments that interact within a whole system of other interrelated problems. They're incredibly complicated dilemmas, often with huge amounts of missing data, which makes them really opaque to traditional ways of analyzing things.
Like the water scarcity example you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Consider the water scarcity issue in the Himalayan plateau, the third pole, affecting Pakistan, India, and China. It's a classic mess. 95% of Pakistan's water goes to agriculture, right? And India is upstream of most of its main rivers. So Pakistanis often suspect India manipulates floodgates, controlling their water supply.
Okay, tension point number one.
Right. And then upstream from India, Indians believe China controls water flowing out of the third poles, melting ice and snowfields.
So everyone suspects the country upstream. But does anyone actually know what's happening?
Well, that's the core of the problem. No one truly knows how much water flows through these systems, or when, or how many gates control the flow, or for what purpose. It's like this massive data black hole, completely shrouded in political secrecy.
A data black hole.
Yeah. Dr. Larry notes that this crucial data is often shrouded as a political tool by the three governments involved. So one thing his fund does is support gathering this data transparently, maybe by a trusted third party.
Ah, okay. Get the facts out there first.
Exactly. That's the crucial first step to analyzing the system. You need that data to identify the key nodes, those critical points of leverage or influence, like a specific dam or river tributary, and also the ouch points, where the system is most vulnerable or where friction and conflict are most likely to flare up, maybe at a border crossing or in a farming region facing drought.
So these systems, they're virtually invisible to the naked eye, as Goleman puts it.
Pretty much. But their workings, their dynamics, they start to become clear when you gather enough data from enough different points. The more data, the clearer the map of the system becomes.
Which, of course, brings us squarely into the era of big data.
Right. And here's where Dr. Brilliant's journey makes this amazing jump, bridging the ancient world of coins with the hypermodern world of algorithms. Years after his Himalayan coin-collecting days, he became the founding executive director of Google.org, Google's nonprofit arm.
Okay.
And while there, he spearheaded one of the first really widely hailed applications of big data, flu spotting, Google Flu Trends.
Oh, right. I remember hearing about that. How did it work exactly?
Well, it was an incredible early example of what we now call collective intelligence. It leveraged the massive amount of user search data Google collects. Basically, a volunteer Google team worked with epidemiologists. They analyzed just enormous numbers of search queries for words connected to flu symptoms, things like fever, ache,
So tracking what people were searching for.
Yeah. He recalls they used like tens of thousands of simultaneous computers just churning through every keystroke on Google over 5 years to build an algorithm.
And the result?
The result was an algorithm that could apparently identify flu outbreaks within about a day, which was just light years faster than the 2 weeks it typically took the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, to notice hotspots based on traditional doctor reports. For a while, it was hailed as revolutionary.
Wow, that's impressive. A day versus 2 weeks.
It really showed the potential power of seeing where collective attention focuses. It's a powerful signal that could, in theory, outpace traditional data collection methods.
And this kind of big data analysis isn't just for public health, right? It's used everywhere now.
Oh, absolutely. Big data software now crunches voluminous amounts of information for all sorts of applications across pretty much every industry.
Like I read about mapping an organization's nerve system, analyzing who connects to whom through calls, emails, texts, whatever.
Exactly. That can surface the really hyper-connected, influential individuals, social connectors, the people who hold key knowledge, the hidden power brokers. Understanding that informal network is crucial for how information actually flows and how decisions really get made.
Or that example of the mobile phone company identifying tribal leaders.
Yeah, that's another great one. They found individuals who had the most connections within small affinity groups. If one of these leaders adopted a new phone service, their whole group, their tribe, was super likely to follow.
And if they left?
The tribe often followed them out the door. This kind of data helps companies understand the social systems, the human systems, within their customer base.
It makes you think about the shift in focus. There's this guy, Thomas Davenport, who tracks big data uses.
Right, Davenport. He made a really crucial point. He noted that for years, organizations focused mainly on internal information, sales figures, inventory, employee data, that kind of thing. But he argued, we've kind of squeezed about as much juice from that fruit as we can. The real action, the critical focus now, has shifted to external information.
External, like what?
Data from the internet, real-time customer sentiment from social media, understanding supply chain risks way out there, all the stuff happening outside the company walls. Davenport argues we now need an ecological model, a way to survey the entire external information environment around an organization, because its success increasingly depends on understanding these vast, complex, often chaotic external systems.
Okay, but this raises a big question, one I think a lot of people have. If we have all this data and these incredibly powerful algorithms to process it super fast,
Yeah.
why do we still need humans in the loop? Can't the computers just figure it out?
That's a great question, and it's something Davenport addresses directly.
Yeah.
He argues, and I think Goleman agrees, that the raw information an organization gets from its computer systems can often be far less useful than information that comes in from other sources in the overall ecology of information, especially when it's processed and contextualized by actual people.
So the raw data isn't enough.
Right. A search engine might give you petabytes of data, right?
Hmm.
But without human intervention, it gives you zero context for understanding, let alone any wisdom. What makes data truly useful, what transforms it from just noise into actionable insight, is the human element. It's the person curating it.
The curator, what does that involve?
Well, the curator has to zero in on what truly matters in all that noise. They have to prune away the irrelevant stuff, establish the context, what does this data actually mean in the real world, and present it in a way that shows its vitality, grabs attention, and makes sense.
Yes, it's not just about presenting numbers, it's about asking the right questions too.
Absolutely. That's the critical thinking piece. Davenport highlighted crucial questions curators need to ask, like, are we even defining the right problem here? Like, do we actually have the right data to solve this problem? What are the hidden assumptions baked into the algorithm we're feeding this data into? And crucially, does the mathematical model guiding those assumptions actually map onto messy reality?
Because sometimes it doesn't.
Exactly. And that's where the limitations and even the dangers of over-relying on big data come in. It's often overlooked.
You mean like, well, the 2008 financial crisis, that's often brought up as a massive systemic failure where models went wrong.
Precisely. The 2008 crisis is often cited as a failure of the method, really. A catastrophic example of placing too much faith in models that inevitably simplify reality. Hedge funds, major banks, they collapsed because the complex mathematical models they relied on were, at their core, just simplifications. They couldn't capture the full complexity of human behavior, economic systems, unexpected events.
It's as though the math looks solid.
Yeah, the models gave crisp numbers, which breeds confidence.
Yeah.
Right? But they hinged on assumptions. For example, assumptions that different types of assets would always behave independently, or that historical data was a perfect predictor of the future market. What they missed was the deep interconnectedness, the potential for cascading failures, and those black swan events, unpredictable, high-impact things totally outside the historical data models were built on.
So when the simplifying assumptions broke down,
The whole system came crashing down. It was a brutal lesson that even the most elegant math can't fully capture the messy, unpredictable reality of complex human systems.
so it's really not enough just to have the data and the math whizzes.
Not at all. Rachel Shutt, who was a senior statistician at Google Research, made this point too. She observed that data science needs way more than just strong math skills. It needs people with wide-ranging curiosity, innovation, people guided by their own experience and intuition, not just by the raw data output.
Intuition, really, in data science.
Yes, because, as Goleman puts it, the best intuition, the truly insightful kind, actually harvests enormous amounts of data. It does it by filtering our entire life experience through the incredibly complex, nonlinear processing power of the human brain.
Ah, so intuition isn't just a guess, it's like rapid subconscious pattern recognition based on everything we know.
Exactly. It's that unique human capacity for understanding context, seeing the bigger picture, sensing what the numbers don't show, that remains completely irreplaceable, even in the age of AI and big data.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us? We've journeyed from Dr. Larry Brilliant discovering ancient trade routes through old coins to the scary speed of global pandemics and into the fascinating but also kind of fraught dilemmas of modern big data. It seems like all these seemingly disparate things are deeply interconnected through these invisible yet incredibly powerful systems. It's about seeing the threads weaving through history and the present and understanding how they shape our world.
Yeah, and if we connect this back to Goleman's main point and focus, understanding these systems isn't just an intellectual exercise, about spotting patterns. It's really about developing the critical thinking skills we all need to navigate a world that's just getting more and more defined by these complex, interrelated problems.
Yeah.
The human element, our curiosity, our lived experience, our fundamental ability to ask the right, insightful questions that remains absolutely vital, has to work alongside those sophisticated algorithms and the biggest data sets, not be replaced by them.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What invisible systems might be at play in your own life or your work right now? Systems that, if you really focused on understanding their dynamics, could reveal some surprising new insights or maybe even point towards solutions you hadn't considered before.